guys, thank you very much for those who joining in. Today we will be talking about recent changes. I've been into the big conference from migration department, from states, territories, exemptions. So pretty much everyone who is involved into migration matters for Australia, and we've been listening a lot of changes and obviously policies, what's going to be going on for the rest of financial year. So today's session, I'd like to share with you everything I've learned for the whole day of Friday. And I'll try to squeeze it within at least an hour, no more than that, because it's a bit too late tonight. But anyway, so this live version event will be obviously left on my page, so feel free to come back to it anytime. I understand it's a bit too late today, so whoever is joining, hello and thank you for joining. So let me start about maybe recent news about opening the borders, because a lot of people ask me whether visitors will be allowed. How about parents coming to Australia? What about partners? Prospective marriage applicants, so everyone, what's going on with the borders. Let's start with most important and burning topic. So from November, our departments and border control is promising for Australians who are fully vaccinated to double shot will be able to go overseas freely, and there will be no need to seek any exemption. So this is very, very good news. Plus, for those who are fully vaccinated, not only they will be able to go offshore to meet, for example, partners, but also they will be coming back and quarantine at home. So it's huge saving costs for those who are planning to go overseas. And it's a good news for those who establish relationship through pandemic, but unfortunately they couldn't meet each other, obviously, because Australia was closed for that long. So guys and girls who would like to go offshore, that's a good opportunity for you, and obviously to meet your partners, to see what's going to be happening, how was going to be your relationship is going to be developing. So that's a very good news for you. Then second, I would say important topic is skilled visas. For those who are stuck overseas and who have temporary visa, for example, if you manage to get regional sponsored visas temporary, either 489 or 491, or graduate visa, and you are stuck overseas and couldn't make it to Australia in time and your visa is about to expire or expiring, department is currently looking at solution to extend those visas. So please do not stress. I believe department will find something out how to help people and extend those visas if obviously it was none of your fault if you went overseas, pandemic started and you couldn't make it back to Australia. So that's a good news. Again, because it was a very, very big conference, so there was no certain timing for everything. So I will just filter for you guys what was important for me to hear and how all these migration pathways will be unfold for you with my suggestions. So anyway, for those who are aiming for skilled migration, 189, 190, 491. Currently for offshore applicants, we have very, very limited opportunities for states and territories. At this moment of time, we have only 2 states and territories who considering offshore applicants, and it's a pretty much high-ranking applicants. It's South Australia, mainly trades, and they also added some interesting occupations such as human resources, marketing, but you need to have very extensive work experience. So you need to be mindful to read obviously requirements, whether you fit for expression of interest. But South Australia were acting fairly good and quick in terms of getting assessment and selecting candidates from the database. So you will have a good chance. It's going to be a 491 visa. So reminder, it's temporary visa for up to 5 years, where you're going to be going to this particular area and will be liable to stay there for at least 3 first years. So do your research, do your homework to see if that particular area is good for you in terms of finding employment, obviously in terms of cost of living, to understand whether it's a good fit, because you will be those people who are going to be residing there end of the day. Second territory who expressed their interest to start accepting offshore applications is Tasmania. Unfortunately, for those who apply, and we applied for our clients extensively once the opportunity was presented, Tasmanian state did not look at any expression of interest as of now, because a lot of my clients were asking when we're going to get any sort of response. So Tasmanian government confirmed that they didn't look at it yet. So I will have to wait, because on average, Tasmanian state may look at the application and process them between 3 to 6 months. So it's pretty significant amount of time, what to do. For all of you who cannot fit into any of these lists as of now, reminder that these two particular states and territories have their own lists, so it's not necessarily fully aligned with PMSOL. So critical list is a bit different, but states, they have their own selection of occupations, what they want as of now of this situation. So you need to be mindful to check everywhere whether you're going to be a good fit, and then obviously to understand for yourself whether this state and territory will be the good fit for yourself and your family. So for those who cannot make it as of now in these states and territories, my best advice, and I kept saying about this before, as of now, it's not bad climate. I would say it's getting even better because the borders are shut, to look at employer-sponsored visas. The reason for that is we do not have applicants or candidates who are freely coming to Australia. Therefore, there is no flow of selection of overseas trained people who can be chosen by Australian employees. So employers are starting to be more and more keen to look at sponsored visa options, even for offshore candidates. So it will be heavily depends on your skill set, obviously in your occupation, whether licensing is required or not. But in a majority of opportunities for occupations, a good chance to keep looking and start really working on it actively, not only just looking through Seek or any other domains where you can get the advertising and see what's available, but you can also target the companies according to your skill set and contact them, call them, and ask whether obviously they can consider yourself as a good candidate. The other option for those who will be able to start working remotely, that's a good opportunity for you to show your skills, and then employer may decide to sponsor you. So anyway, regardless of the borders closure, that's a good timing to start digging into employers market, regardless of your occupation, to see what's available and what's going to be your response to your inquiries from the employers. So I'm dealing with my pool of employees, and we currently looking for certain occupations. So I'm extending my list and my opportunities. I will be posting more opportunities on my social media. So please follow and see if any of these occupations can be fit into your skill set. In regards to employer-sponsored visa and relation to PMSOL list, that's a huge advantage for those who are on the list, whose occupation are on the list, because if you manage to get the employer and apply for employer-sponsored visas, the occupations from PMSOL list are heavily prioritized. What does that mean? We received positive outcomes for temporary visas for up to 2 days. It was accountant occupation, and permanent residency 186 within a month's time. So it's very, very good options to get sponsored, because once you get sponsored, again, if your occupation is on the PMSOL list, you will be able to pretty much automatically get an exemption to travel to Australia anytime now, obviously subject to flights. If your occupation is not on the PMSOL list, it doesn't matter it doesn't really matter. You can still search for employer, and then it will depend on the occupation whether your presence will be needed physically in Australia. For example, all these occupations where you cannot perform your job remotely, it's a good opportunity to get the visa lodged and then seek an exemption and basically provide evidence that employer will not be able to carry on business, or you will be obviously much needed candidate to get yourself in Australia and start working. So it is doable, it is possible. Even I can tell you 400 visas where employer sponsored is not required, and it's this type of visa is for highly skilled migrants who can come for short-term employment. For example, can be technicians, can be other sort of occupations, but should be ANSCO 1 to 3 group. In this particular situation, it's not as much cost for both yourself and employer, and then exemption can still be granted if justified with a good evidence. So then you will be able to come even earlier with less expenses to start with, and then obviously start working and see what's going to be other options. In terms of transition from employer-sponsored visa to permanent residency, for those of you who don't know or would like to know more, it's not necessarily standard pathway, so you can always consider coming on a temporary visa, employer-sponsored 482, which is a very good deal because you coming and start working right away rather than coming on student visa, paying everything by yourself, and then obviously in the vision that you may get some employment. So this is guaranteed employment, and then you may consider either staying with employer to make a transition after 3 years to permanent residency if your occupation is in the medium to long-term list. Alternatively, if your occupation is in the short-term list, you cannot make direct transition to permanent residency, but you can make at least 2 + 2 years, so 4 in total employment contract, and then you will be able to look at state sponsorship opportunities like 190 visa once you're in Australia. Please be reminded there will not be pathway that fits all, because obviously every single state and territory will have their own criteria. So what sort of candidates, priority industries, points, anything else. So you will not be able to just decide, okay, I have an occupation, my occupation has presence in this list, I have 70 points and it's guaranteed I'm going to get something. So it will not work like this anymore. You need to really have a strategic planning. Where are you going, or if you're planning to target employers, what location will suit you the best? For example, if you're aiming to go to South Australia as an employee on an employer-sponsored visa, be mindful that this particular state will ask consent from your employer if you're going to be transiting to state nomination earlier in your years on employer-sponsored visa. So there may be some limitations state by state. So you need to be aware of where you're exactly going, what sort of ANSCO code occupation your employer will offer, because it will heavily depend on the overall strategy for your case and how quickly you can transit to permanent residency. So very important. As I said, there will not be pathway that fits everybody. In terms of business visas, a lot of updates were given in regards to that. So as you remember, now we have 4 states and territories who can offer small business owner program. It's ACT, South Australia, Queensland, and Tasmania. Again, every single state and territory will have their own criteria, what sort of business, priority industries, whether you need to establish business or you have to buy a business. But it may be a good opportunity, good pathway for those who are aiming to secure a state sponsorship nomination under 491 only. So it's not going to be a right away permanent residency through employers through temporary visa. But in this case, you basically can come to Australia, build your business case, and then transit to 491 under state sponsorship small business owner. So that's possible, but only for onshore applicants. So people from offshore cannot just suggest any business and come to Australia. You need to come to Australia on some sort of visa, and usually the pathway will be to come to on student visa, then consider graduate visa, and then on the duration of your graduate visa, looking at this pathway. So classic business visas, again, good news that pretty much mandatory first entry requirement was waived because of pandemic. So states and territories are welcoming candidates who would like to invest, but amount of investments was lifted. So it's down to you if you have the business case. We do deal with business visas, so you're free to contact me for further assessment and planning. Another interesting program that's currently constantly evolving is Global Talent. So a lot of people were relying on this program in terms of speedy process to get permanent residency. I can say from my practical experience dealing with that program for over a year, because it is evolving and evolving from the side of department anytime they would like to make some changes, it's quite hard to keep up sometimes. But at this moment of time, the priority is given to PhD candidates who are either ready to complete, about to complete, already completed PhD, and completed PhD within the last 3 years. So basically, it have international achievements within the last 2 years. So you have to be recent and prominent, it's called. Again, priority will be given to candidates who are either working in Australia with higher salary threshold, or will be able to secure the work within this amount of money. So again, the opportunities are there for those who, for example, studying master degree and do not know where they can go, or if you can't find employment this very moment, you can consider going through PhD program and then building your case to have an option to apply for global talent visa. So these visas was limited by places 15,000, but for the last year, department didn't reach that far. So department is very, very selective in terms of who they would like to invite. And the best case management would be to find your connections, find the nominator as soon as you can, and obviously build your case stronger with securing job offer. That's the best. Otherwise, department may have obviously the opportunity to reject your expression of interest on GTI. So GTI cases are selected and picked by department once you lodge. Therefore, whatever you put in your expression of interest will matter your processing time. So please be aware of that. Another two categories I would like to discuss today briefly is going to be parents' visas, a partner's visa program. So a lot of people during pandemic was obviously anxious and hesitating what to do with parents. For those who were lucky enough to be stuck in Australia through pandemic, they have, I would say, better options, because you could have applied for parents' visa in Australia, either 143, and then consider a temporary solution visa to wait for processing, or if the parents were aged enough to apply for aged parent visa, it was obviously another option to apply and stay in Australia on bridging visa. So a lot of opportunities for those who stuck in Australia. For those who stuck overseas, was basically dark time of uncertainties what to do. And for those people who did listen to what I was saying and make their choices to apply offshore and put yourself in the queue, it would be, I would say, the good choice for now. If you're considering bringing your parents on the long term, simply because we do not have any opportunities for processing time to be reduced, it may be even increased, because through pandemic, parents' visa processing center was temporarily suspended from March 2020 to nearly September 2020. So during that period of time, none of parents' visa were processed. Therefore, the queue was building up more and more because people were applying. So now, if you are thinking what to do, my best advice would be to apply for parents' visa, for example, 143, because the current processing time may reach about 5 years. So you have plenty of time to secure required funding to have this visa granted and pay this excessive amount of government fees. But at entry level, you only have to have at least 5,000 to pay for first installment for government fees and put the application in the queue. So that's the good news. Later on, if and when obviously the visitor visas will be allowed and parents will be allowed, if your parent will reach the age state, you will be able to consider bringing this parent to Australia and transit to age parent visa and save your place in the queue. That's the most important, because if you're going to be doing nothing, then once the borders will be reopened and you bring your parent, then you will start obviously from scratch, and by that time the consideration time may increase even more. So that's your choice how you want to obviously consider that situation. In terms of partners visa and prospective marriage visa, I would like to give an update as well, because these visas were about to be changed by the government, and this was announced for November this year. As of now, we don't have any guidelines when it's going to happen, but I'm continuously warning my clients and prospects that if you're considering this program, it is again the good time to apply anytime now before the changes may happen. So briefly, the proposed changes were to split the application in two, and where sponsorship application may go first and be approved before the visa application can be lodged. So that's significant change, and if the system will be amended that way, it will affect possibly a lot of people who are currently in Australia, and especially if your visa will be expiring shortly. So please be mindful that at this moment of time in the current climate, you can lodge your application pretty much the last moment. If the situation with new changes will come into effect, then you will not be able to do so, because you will have to get your sponsorship first. And then sponsor will have more legal obligations under the new system, and possibly, obviously, because the application will be split in two, then the costs of the application will be increased, and then the processing time will be increased again. So that's not the best news. And English language test may be implemented. That's what the government was suggesting as part of partners visa program. So that will put some applicants and sponsors at stress. But please be mindful that in English test requirement was proposed only at stage 2. So you will have plenty of time to come to Australia and actually study and learn English while in Australia. So that's not a problem. Another possibilities of changes in sometime in the future, it was only given to department as a form of recommendation, and it's actually something very significant if that's going to happen. So two big recommendations was given. First, to combine medium to long-term list and short-term list back together, the way it used to be on a former 457 visa, in order to allow everybody to make a transition to permanent residency. I personally believe that it may not be happening that way, because then the shift to bring more people to regional Australia will not be satisfied that way. Because if you remember, once the government split up two streams and allow more options for regional Australia on 494 visas, then it's not going to be a good idea for them to come back to this. But however, we don't know what's going to happen. And the second good news, possibly in the form of recommendation, is for the government to consider lifting age criteria and age requirement for skilled visa and employer-sponsored permanent residency visa from 45 years to 50. So that is only a recommendation at this stage, but just let's watch the space to see what's going to be happening in terms of implementing this recommendation by the department, because it's actually a good idea, good news. A lot of very, very skilled applicants are coming to the age of 44. So it's very good advantage for Australia to bring more skilled people, and for skilled people to have extra 5 years and basically make it happen, because a lot of candidates, even during pandemic, was coming to me at the age of 44, 45. And it's a big miss, because currently there is nothing you can do, especially for offshore candidates, to make it as quickly as possible. So summing up, overall, my perception of all these changes were that every single state will evolve to the direction where they consider it appropriate and necessary for current financial year. For example, we have Victoria State currently focusing on STEM sectors. We have South Australia State focusing on target industries. So pretty much every state has their own priorities, their own preferences, including skill set they want, occupation and skills, and obviously for business visas as also target sectors for business activity. So migration is becoming really interesting for me as a professional, because we're constantly looking at every single case, the different angles. And as I said, there is no pathway that fits it all. It's a good and bad thing in the way, because obviously bad thing, you need to have your own unique strategy for your case. And at the same time, Australia would like to confirm the skills by obviously reinforcing the idea to bring skilled people. Mainly now, all these directions will be shifting towards employer-sponsored visa or job offers, in order for you to prove that you basically worth employment and you were pretty much checked by employer to let you come to Australia. So yes, migration becoming really teamwork. So I'm working with clients at this moment, and it's not only a matter of paperwork, it's a matter of strategy and constant rethinking. And if the opportunities arising for any sort of state and territory options, I usually provide them to the client for consideration. So it's constant work together as a team. And especially if you're in Australia, again, it's your case building for your future steps, in order for everybody to understand what they want to achieve. For example, whether you need to work in Australia, whether you need to advance your English, everything else, and especially to prove to state that you will be a good candidate. So every state pretty much start considering little submission, providing why this candidate is good fit for the state, and why the state basically will benefit having you in the state. So you need to consider every single case in your situation in a wide perspective, and basically put the best case forward. So department inclined and confirm that they would not like to see any copy-paste submissions in terms of if you are submitting your case to the state, and obviously asking to consider your situation. It needs to be uniquely written. Yes, it's not going to be 50 pages long document, but it needs to be to the point, to basically convince the state authorities that you're going to be bringing wealth of knowledge, and obviously will be a good candidate for that state. So overall, that's not a bad start for this year. And unfortunately, some states were not presented as promised in this conference, especially my state, Queensland state. So we're still waiting for updates on state sponsorship program. But we're already taking candidates on post-payment arrangement, where if you have skill assessment, if you have English test done, and you're pretty much ready. So we prepping everything to wait until the state will be reopened in order to lodge our best submission forward, best cases as quickly as we can, and obviously achieve you the best and quickest result. That's my job. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I have availabilities for consultations, or we have free assessment tools on my webpage. Alternatively, I'll keep coming here on live sessions for any updates or question and answer, depending on the demand. We may put some poll, what do you guys want? Because I have Instagram in Russian and Facebook in English to update everyone in terms of what's going on, and obviously answer any questions you might have throughout your journey to migrate and settle finally to Australia. So thank you very much for all those who came to my live session and listen here. Otherwise, I'll see you very, very soon.